So in the previous section, we learned about color slicer tool. Now we're going to be learning about something which is really interesting, which is called Windows tool. So if you go and click here, so I would just make another node, just label it as Windows or WIN. And if we go here, so what this tool does is that this allows you to draw certain shapes on your image, and then you can make changes in that shape or outside the shape. Let me show you a really easy example. So for example, if you just choose a circle, and if we say just want to focus on the subject, not too much on the background, and our goal is to, so I'm just zooming out to make the image look like this. So our goal is to, and now I'm pressing Command or Control to bring the image up and down. So our goal is to keep the brightness of the subject where the subject is good, but the surrounding areas a little bit low, so that the whole focus is on the subject. How do you do that? So I made this circle. I can make it big or small like so. And then you can also make it a little bit softer. So you can go like so. And now what I can do is I can go to the curve. So this area is selected. If I do any changes, it is just in this area. You see I've increased again, it's just blowing out. I will go to parade. What I want to do now, I'll just press Z. I have two options. If I go to custom curve here, I just press Y so that the curve is selected for the entire colors. I can either make the subject a little bit brighter, but that means that this thing is kind of blowing apart. If we go full screen, it looks a bit weird. We can reset it. What we can do, we go to Windows tool, we can see that this circle appears. You can invert this tool. So if you just click this button, and if you check the node here, so now in the node also you can see, if I just zoom in the node, in this node you can see that this little section is selected. If I invert it, now you can see that everything is selected except my subject. And then you go to custom curves. Remember I told you to reduce the brightness of the entire image. How do you do it? You go to custom curve here and pull it from the mid. So you might not see any significant change, but if I go full screen, you would be surprised. This is before, this is after. And this is what you should be doing in almost all the image, because the subject is the most important thing in the video, in the frame. And how you kind of make it more visible is just by using this. And this process actually has a term which is called vignetting. Vignetting means you're kind of darkening out the outside, like the outer areas of the frame. And for some of you, if you think that it looks a bit weird, you can of course increase the, how the darkness of the surrounding, it blends in. We can also use it for some other images. So let's go copy this. Let's go to maybe this image. I'll just make let's go here, and we're gonna be pasting it. So Command V. So our subject is here. So let's do that. Let's go full screen before and after. You see, so now the whole focus is on the subject. And what we can also do, you can put any setting you want. So say, for example, if you go effect, if we want to put any blur, we go to Gaussian blur, we go put it here. So there is a blur around the subject, but you can of course reduce the intensity. And if you go full screen, this is before and this is after. So this image also has a little bit blur, so we are kind of making sure that the midpoint is a little bit sharper. So this is also really important, not the blur part, blur is optional, but this vignetting, it's also really important when it comes to color grading. And why I wanted to show you this is because this. Of course, we can use the Windows tool as, to highlight the subject. But we can also use this tool, for example, when we were in the color slicer and when we went to the skin, I saw that it is also, when I press the skin, it is also selecting the grass, it is also selecting the mountains, right? I just wanted to select or have the effect just around the subject. or at least try to make it as much as possible around the subject. What we can do, we go to Windows tool, we go select this part. So you see, you can also make it square, you can make it circle, you can make it a line, you can make a lot of shapes, but we're gonna be doing something custom shape. So if you go here, you go to curve, and what you can do, if I just zoom in with my mouse, I go here, I can make a shape around my subject. I can go up. So now what would happen is that any change what I would be doing would be just around this area. And now to make it a little bit less harsh, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be changing the softness. So you go in line and outline. So yeah, let's go to the color slicer tool. And now if we select the skin, you can still see that the other areas are selected, like the mountains and the grass in the front. It is showing, but if I change the hues, the only change which is happening is here, is on the subject. You can see that the mountains are not changing. So this method you can also do in the other sections. So if we go to this, you cannot obviously copy it because it's a custom thing, because we just made it specifically for this. This effect we can also do for our red jacket or the green grass. Imagine if there were greens here as well, and if we just wanted to change the color of these greens, then we would have made a sort of boundary around that green, that node, specific node, would select just those greens. So yeah, that's how we can use a qualifier tool. So now what we can also do is we can kind of track this, because you can see that my frame is moving, my subject has kind of gotten out here. If I go here, my subject is here, the hand is kind of coming out. So let's go to the original frame where I drew this according to how the subject was here. I think it was this one. And now we go to this plane tracker, and we need to select this window. So now it's going to go forward and backward, and it's going to track the movement of the subject to make sure that this stays on the subject. So now you can see that if I move it around, this whole diagram what we have made, it is also moving with the subject. But yeah, that's how you can use the tracker tool and the window tool to do any specific change in any image. For example, let me give you another example. So let's use this image, for example. I can see that the image is kind of well exposed, but I can see a lot of brightness coming out from here. So what I can do, of course, we go to the Windows tool, we can use the gradient. So if we do the gradient and if we turn on the highlights, then it kind of also shows what all areas are selected. And then you can go like this. So this is kind of, the line is really harsh, so the separation everybody could see, but if we do like this, then the separation is a little bit less harsh. And then we go like this, zoom out just to see, and I want these areas to be a little bit dark. So it is kind of selecting the area which is the brightest in the image, and I'm just gonna take it out. So now let's go to the curves, because we want to reduce the exposure of the entire area or the entire image which was being selected. So let's just bring it down. So here you can see that the exposure has gone down, but I think it can maybe come a little bit more inside. So you see the entire image has been reduced here, the brightness. And what we can also do, we can reduce the highlights. So if I reduce the highlights, you can see I'm reducing the highlights a lot. So let's go full screen. This was before and this is after. So here what we did was we just used the gradient tool, and we put the gradient tool on the brightest area of the image and reduced the brightness of that area, because now we want to focus on the subject here. So yeah, That was Windows tool for you, and I also showed you how to track a window tool, which is really useful. Now let's move on to the next section.